America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Elaine Parker with the Job Creators Network, and today we're joined by Patrick Hedger, Director of Policy at NetChoice, to break down one of the biggest questions facing the American workforce. Will artificial intelligence destroy jobs or create new opportunities? Patrick brings a data-driven perspective on how innovation, policy, and global competition are shaping the future of work. Welcome back to the show, Patrick.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Well, I'm always excited to talk about AI. It seems to be a topic of conversation that comes up with a lot of my guests, even though they didn't come on to talk about AI. So whether it's other reporters or small business owners, even doctors, it's coming up because it's becoming everyday part of our world, which I think is a good thing. But I know people get scared and have anxiety about, that we see a lot of news stories about big corporations laying off tens of thousands of people. Sometimes it's attributed to AI and technology. Some of the jobs that we see that were, financial analysts or, entry-level analysts coming out of college, we worry that those jobs will go away. That creates a lot of anxiety. I mean, do you think that those fears about AI killing jobs are justified, or is there another way to look at this?
Yeah, certainly with any sort of technological revolution on the scale of AI, there's going to be some adjustments that are going to happen in the labor market. But, I'd like to remind folks that there are more people alive today doing more jobs and more types of jobs with more technology than ever before in human history. So the trend lines always go up. The economic growth, more technology, there are more types of jobs and more overall jobs available. So we have yet to encounter a technology that has truly caused a permanent long-term displacement of any significant number of workers. There was a time in this country where the vast majority, and we're talking 90+% of people, were employed in agriculture. And that's certainly no longer the case these days. I think it's a couple single percentage points. So that, this is not to say there won't be an adjustment period, and that's not to say that we shouldn't try to do anything to make it easier for people to transition into new careers and also train people to work in a world with AI. But this idea that there's not going to be any sort of demand for labor going forward is just not true.
Well, it's interesting. I have a very good friend who I would never have considered her technologically advanced. And she is a senior vice president at her organization, her company. And she got into using AI and incorporating, kind of self-taught, incorporating it into her job. She's senior, so she knows the industry. She's been in it for, 15 years in what she's doing. And so she's been able to merge the two together and figure out how to incorporate. She's got the industry knowledge and expertise. So she's figured out how to incorporate AI into it to kind of become the unicorn, in that sense, because you can't just stick a new person in there who knows AI, but doesn't know the history and the industry experience. And I feel like that's the hook, is that you're going to need that industry experience. But what happens to those entry-level graduates coming out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think there's still going to be demand for humans in the loop. I mean, planes have been able to fly themselves for decades, but I think there's still a demand for somebody to be there in the cockpit. And you're going to see that with AI as well. You're going to need to have people that are well versed in how AI works, and able to interact with it, and also able to check it, and be able to communicate what the AI is doing or how it's working to their human customer. So there's still going to be that demand for the the creation of jobs of new folks coming into the workforce that have those AI skills. And so if the concern is about those entry level positions, we ought to be looking at making sure that we have AI education in the K-12 system and in the higher education system and at the technical colleges as well, probably primarily there. That's where a lot of the jobs are going to be created in the future, is in the technical fields. But again, AI is going to essentially enhance productivity to such an extent that you're going to continue to grow the economic pie. And there's going to be continued demand for folks that understand how to utilize AI systems. So again, I think it's really important to see it as more of a tool that will essentially enhance the productivity of a worker versus truly displace any one worker.
Well, it's interesting. I read an article maybe a month or so ago that Target was cutting some jobs at headquarters, so corporate jobs, but then increasing AI usage in the stores at the store level and hiring people to do it to increase the customer experience, was the way I read it. I'm not sure what the actual end use is there, but so a decrease in a corporate job and then an increase in the jobs at the at the stores, so customers are having a better experience, and so kind of I guess a trade-off really. But when you think about the roles that are going to be created as AI becomes more and more involved in our life and part of our lives, what kind of roles are you talking about? And I think you could take a step back and even include the AI infrastructure that needs to be built.
Yeah, so we saw an announcement this week that Meta is launching a free job training program to teach people how to essentially wire up data centers. And also, and that's a completely free program, and it's teaching a skilled trade to folks. And so we're seeing huge demand for roles like that: electricians, plumbers, HVAC technicians. But what we're also going to need are people that know how AI systems work and are able to command them correctly. I mean, that's really what is going to be sort of the key of the future workforce is, do you know how to put inputs into an AI to get the output that you desire, whether that is creating a financial services product, or that is tinkering with a machine on the assembly line that is using AI, being able to communicate to that machine what you need it to do next and doing that correctly. Those are skills that people are going to need to have. And so that I think, again, it's hard to predict exactly what new types of wholly new jobs will be created because of AI. It's like trying to predict in 1996 the types of jobs that would be created by the internet. I mean, would have been very difficult to do, but I don't think anybody would ever thought that there could be an entire ecosystem of people making a living doing podcasts, which there are now, right? That's a a completely novel industry, really. And it sort of grew the pie in the communications industry. And I think we're going to see similar things happen with AI, but it's hard to predict at this point.
Yeah, I can see that. But some of would surprise people to know that some of these data center jobs that only require a high school degree are going to pay six figures. I mean, that's very encouraging.
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of demand out there, and there's not really a great amount of supply at this point. When we talk about these entry level white collar jobs, what's going to happen to them? I think for a long time, even prior to the sort of advent of the AI age, we've had an oversupply of folks coming out with 4-year degrees that have struggled to find careers that pay back the costs that they incurred to be able to go get those 4-year degrees, versus you got people absolutely beating down the door looking for welders, looking for plumbers, looking for HVAC technicians, electricians, skilled trades, even carpenters. There's a real lack of that kind of supply in the American labor market, and that's why you're seeing that high school equivalent education jobs are commanding six figures, because those skilled trades are universally valuable. I mean, forget AI, right? If we're talking about bringing back manufacturing to the United States, building more homes, that's going to require all of the exact same skill sets that the data centers and the AI industry are demanding right now. So I think we really got to look at what our education system is producing, because for a long time, what our schools have been producing has not met really the demand picture for the broader economy, again, even prior to AI.
Yeah, I agree. And you kind of just alluded to sort of the ripple effect of the economic ripple effect of some of these data centers being built from actually building the center to the entire community around it, that then obviously will come in, particularly if they're in more less populated areas, which would make sense that they start there because land is cheaper and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of positive knock-on effects from a data center. A lot of people like to say, well, it doesn't create that many permanent jobs, but what you know is that when a data center is in a location, you know it's got a good electrical grid infrastructure, it's got good internet infrastructure, and it's got a skilled workforce nearby, and that tends to draw in other industries. I live here in Northern Virginia, and Northern Virginia is data center alley. There's far more data centers here concentrated than anywhere else in the world. But what you also see near all of those data centers is lots and lots of office parks of Fortune 50 companies. I mean, driving out towards Data Center Alley on the Dulles Toll Road out to Loudoun County, where all these data centers are, you'll pass by skyscrapers with Google, Google's name on the side, as well as other major large companies, lots of defense contractors. So the data centers are a good signal and indicator, and they tend to bring a lot of that good infrastructure along with them. The data center companies will pay to upgrade the grid. They'll pay to upgrade the fiber connections for internet to be able to service the data center. So there are a lot of really positive knock-on effects, as well as, again, you've got a couple hundred six-figure jobs, permanent jobs running that data center. They create demand for dentists. They create demand for teachers. They create demand for everything that anybody else that moves into a community needs.
Didn't President Trump want to require these companies that are building the data centers to make those investments in the communities in terms of upgrading the electrical grid, because they're going to require so much electricity when they come into these communities? Is there federal policy to do that, or are these companies coming in and doing it?
Yeah, so what was really exciting about what President Trump did with the Ratepayer Protection Pledge was he was essentially using the White House to elevate a lot of what's already been happening. It's already the law in all 50 states that the public utility commissions cannot pass off the costs of a large load onto the residential rate base. So the data centers, actually, if you look at there's been a study by the Department of Energy that found that places where data centers are moving in, they're actually able to absorb a lot of the fixed costs of the grid, right? Your power bill is two parts. It's what you use and it's the cost of the grid. And data centers are actually able to absorb a tremendous amount of that grid cost and actually have a suppressing effect on electricity prices in areas where they move in. And so, again, what the White House is doing is sort of elevating that narrative, elevating that fact about what the actual impact that data centers do have. I understand people's concerns. There's a lot of misinformation out there about what exactly a data center is and the impacts that it has. But yeah, the companies that are building them are clamoring for the ability to build their own infrastructure, bring their own power, as well as pay for the upgrades necessary in the communities that they are. Because nobody wants to build a data center where there isn't good electrical connection and there isn't a good internet connection. That's bad business. Nobody's going to do that. Yeah,
absolutely. In terms of global competition, China's a big worry in this AI race. I mean, I can remember with Russia as a kid, or reading about the space race with Russia and getting to the moon first. Well, here we are with China competing with them on the AI side. I mean, AI is going to add trillions into our global economy. Where are we in terms of competing with China in this area?
Yeah, I think that's the most important question. And that's why we really need to get the trade-offs right about data centers, about AI, and making sure that, we're not putting in place policies that inhibit our ability to compete in this space. Because if you look at the last technological revolution, which is really the internet age, the United States has dominated the internet age. I mean, the major global internet companies are all based here in the United States. And you can look across the Atlantic Ocean to Europe, which was at the turn of the 20th century into the 21st century. Europe's economy was larger than that of the United States, with about double the population. And in the last 26 years, the United States economy has now doubled the size of the European economy in just 26 years. I mean, and that is entirely because America won the internet age. We didn't allow regulations to hamper the ability for us to build world-class services like Google, like Amazon, like Meta, the companies that are now leading us into the AI age. We Americans are benefiting directly. You look at your 401k, benefit directly from the fact that America won the internet. We have to be able to do the same thing in AI. We're positioned to do that right now because we won the internet age. But I think AI is far more of a ubiquitous technology than even the internet. That's hard to imagine because the internet's in everything these days. But AI is really going to be turbocharging every aspect of the economy and creating tremendous new growth opportunities. And it's going to be the way that you get information in almost every way going forward. And because other countries have essentially regulated themselves out of that race, the only other global competitors that are able to build anything that is close to what the United States is China. They do have scaled counterparts to the Googles, Amazons, Metas that operate both within China and then have subsidiaries outside of China that are really making huge inroads in the global South. So the big question is the next billion people that come online and the next billion people that start utilizing AI, are they going to be utilizing American-built systems, or are they going to be getting their information from the Chinese Communist Party? That is the question that we face.
Speaking of the CCP, there's a lot of national security issues with AI, in terms of being first on the competition side. What happens if we fall behind? China doesn't have the regulations involved in just building the data centers. They don't have the environmental constraints. They don't care. I mean, they literally don't care in terms of environmental, and they just are worried about being first and beating us essentially, which brings a lot of national security concerns.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big concern, like I talked about like where the future of the global economy is going to be based. Where the main drivers of economic growth are going to be, and who controls the flows of information. Is it going to be in America that has First Amendment protections, or is it going to be in China? Is it the Chinese stock market that's going to grow exponentially? Is it their economy that's going to double in size versus their rivals, or is it going to be ours? Those are the real questions that we're facing. But also, I think I would encourage folks to look to what's happening in the fight between Ukraine and Russia. That shows the power of technology in order to really kind of upset power balances. The Ukrainians have utilized drone technology as well as AI trained drones to be able to inflict the kind of damage on Russia that nobody would have ever expected. The Ukrainians actually used AI trained drones to take out about a third of Russia's nuclear bombers. I mean, that is just incredible. And so that really shows the power of getting this type of technology right. It's important from an economic and cultural sense. We want America to continue to be sort of the single pole in the world on those things, and a source for open information and open markets. But also, there are defense applications here that we cannot ignore. And, we want to continue to have the most powerful military in the world. That means having the best technology sector in the world, too.
Absolutely. For somebody who, hasn't even ventured into downloading ChatGPT and started just using it generally, what would you recommend to your average American who feels like they're falling behind in terms of just learning how to use it, and where they could, get some lessons, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, what's cool about AI is it's really the first type of technology that can teach you how to use it. So you can go in and ask Gemini or ChatGPT or any of the other major chatbots out there what kind of things it can do, and play around with it. Just experiment with it. One way I've found that I use AI a lot, I like to garden, and I've been able to walk around my yard and ask Gemini live, pull up the camera, and say, "Hey, what's this plant? What kind of shade does it need? What kind of water does it need?" And it has those answers. And I also like to cook, so you can take a picture of the things that are in your pantry and say, what can I make with these things? And then you begin to kind of understand how AI really plays a complementary effect to labor, not necessarily displacing it. By teaching me new things in terms of gardening and cooking, that creates new demand for me to go out and buy new ingredients, buy new plants, buy new tools, and things like that. So it's really it really helps with the big problem that we have in our economy, which is information asymmetry, where sometimes it's hard to either find information, or you're reliant on a very narrow stream of information, whether it's something that only your car mechanic would know, or something that only your doctor would know. It's really an empowering tool to be able to present new information and be able to go to those places where potentially the consumer felt a little left behind before, and bring them up to the plate.
How concerned are you about the inherent bias that's in AI just based on the indexes that it's drawing from?
Yeah, that's certainly a concern. And the best way we combat that concern is by making sure we can allow 1,000 flowers bloom. We don't want to create a regulated sector where only a couple of companies are going to be able to compete. And that there is not a choice between LLMs, is not a choice between AI models that have had their weights adjusted by different industries or different interests. You should be able to find the AI system that really works best for you, and you would want the AI companies to compete to offer the most accurate information. And to the extent that you create regulatory structures that reduce that competition in the marketplace, you reduce their incentive to create the most accurate and up-to-date models. So we don't want that to happen, and that's what happens when you create too much of a bureaucratic structure in the innovation process. When people talk about how are we going to regulate AI, it's not about saying that there's not going to be any regulation, but where is the regulation going to happen? Is it going to happen during the innovation process, during the development process, or are we going to target specific known harms after the technology has been developed? We don't want you don't want to stick bureaucracy into the garage where somebody is building the next Google of the world. You want to address specific problems that occur afterwards, and then put in place narrow and targeted regulations versus allowing bureaucrats to try and design technology.
So my concern is in terms of the regulations around this industry, because everyone's has been sort of taking that position. How much regulation is enough right now, so that it doesn't stymie the growth and the development, and how much is too little, so that we aren't going into areas that could be dangerous for humankind, right? Um, uh, but the people who are going to make these regulations, the members of Congress, I remember watching the congressional hearings with the CEO of Twitter, pre-Elon, Meta and Google, and the people who were asking the questions are not knowledgeable enough to even understand this technology. And it was almost comical to watch these hearings because they don't know. I mean, and I don't mean to be insulting to them. They're very intelligent people, I'm sure all of them in their own right, but they don't know this technology. Many of them are, the average age in Congress is pretty senior. And so how do we deal with the regulatory side of things? Because we don't want to stymie it. And it's their own fear of all of the what ifs that could create a lot of regulations that stymie it.
Yeah, I mean, that what you're getting at is the concept of regulatory humility, and that is, the best regulations come from folks that don't try to predict the future too much. They address what can be seen, specific and narrowly targeted harms that can be addressed without, again, introducing some sort of broad, new, open-ended bureaucratic structure that can create choke points and create confusion, right? There should be clarity. There should be certainty. Here are clear rules of the road and guardrails about things that we know versus, again, trying to predict the future, right? My entire job is to study this technology and its interaction with public policy. And even I was hesitant to try and predict the types of jobs that would be created by AI because we simply don't know. And so regulators don't know that either. They're working on lots of different things on top of AI. So again, it's about making sure that we have a competitive marketplace because the competition is ultimately the best regulator out there. And then making sure that if there is a harm that's addressed or a harm that occurs, going after that specifically, and also making sure that we assign liability to most closely to bad action or negligence. And so, I like to say about the AI process, you can apply the principles to any technology, right? A hammer, for example. You wouldn't create a regulation that says, I need you to design me a hammer that can still nail nails, but it cannot be used as a weapon. That's impossible. And therefore, you wouldn't have any hammers. And so we don't want to create that for AI. You're not going to be able to create any tool ever that is perfectly safe or cannot be misused. That's a very, very high standard, if not an impossible standard. And so we have to, again, make sure when it comes to the hammer, it's just illegal to hit somebody over the head with it. That's the regulation that you can put in place. And that assigns liability to the misuse versus, again, trying to introduce impossible standards at the design level.
Makes sense. Well, I have one last question for you. Tell everyone where they can learn more about you and what you're working on at NetChoice.
Yeah, so you can find us at netchoice.org. Find us on X at NetChoice. You can follow me at Pat_Hedger on X as well. And then we've got presence on all the major social media platforms as well.
Well, Patrick, thanks so much for joining us. This is a pivotal moment, and whether America leads or falls behind in this AI race will shape our economy, jobs, and global standing for decades to come. Main Street Matters is part of the Salem Podcast Network. New episodes drop every Wednesday and Friday. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast from, and we'll be back soon with another episode. Bye for now.